Hey everyone, it's a new day. We're continuing to take apart this 1939 John Deere A. So today, just going to be kind of another disassembly day. I've broken a lot of the bolts loose. I've had some time to think about what I want to do. I'd like to get things taken apart so that I can get parts ordered and minimize the number of orders of parts because of shipping and everything else. And then once I get parts, I can hopefully get a lot done on this thing. So my goal right now is I want to take basically everything from the crankshaft forward off. I want to look inside the governor here, make sure that everything is good. And actually, we'll look up close here and talk about the radiator and fan shaft support here so you can understand that in a little more detail. So this is kind of interesting. The earlier John Deere's had a rubber mount. Now that isn't really what you see here. This is a jerry rig operation going on. But there was a rubber piece, and that is strictly what was holding the fan on. And as that rubber would age and get old, it would crack, break, and since that is all that was holding the fan on, it would send the fan into the radiator and ruin your radiator. So this hasn't been updated yet. On the later tractors, this was a spring and friction disc system. And the interesting thing is, so we're going to convert this. And to do that, the shaft and everything is all the same from here on back. And we're going to take the components from another fan shaft that I have, all of the friction and drive disc pieces, and we're going to put that on here. And we're going to have to change this fan because it just won't mount up and work the same way. So that's why I'm going to take the governor off, and I want to take the radiator off first, get that out of here, and I might just work on this. I might get the governor off, put it back on, and then just work on this fan shaft like this because it's actually kind of a nice working height and everything else. I'll show you another fan shaft here as an example of what it will look like in the end. So here's what it will look like. You have your pulley, which I'm wondering why the pulley is even on that one up there. You've got springs, or a spring, and then behind here are like friction discs sort of things. They're almost like a piece of plastic. And then you've got these kind of disc pieces here. These are cast. You got to be careful not to break them. And then a keeper or collar. And then these are little keepers that when you compress the spring and take them off of these keepers, you can pull the keepers out because they're two halves, and then everything will come apart. What I have used before is some carpenter's clamps, since they're nice and long and you got to go all the way back on the governor or the fan shaft. But anyway, that I'll cover that in another video. I'm probably getting too in depth here, so I'm just gonna kind of start taking some things apart here. Like I said, I've got everything to take the air stack off. The 39s are kind of unique because this muffler is kind of all one piece, so it's just 3 bolts. The muffler comes off. It's not like others where it bolts on top. We'll take the upper water pipe off. Like I said, governor off. Take the radiator off. I plan to get a whole new core for this radiator. I don't think I'm going to bother testing it or anything. It just seems like the leaks on it were too high for it to just be a gasket. Shockingly, this water pipe here, the overfill pipe that bolts into the top there, that was loose. Thankfully, somebody had gotten that out before. I had a bad experience once. It was rusted in there. I was dumb. I heated it up. Well, you don't heat up cast because when it cooled, it cracked, and I had to do a new radiator top. So just a warning on that. And so yeah, that'll get us all the way back to the crankshaft. We got to get the pulley off, and at some point we'll get that flywheel off. You can see I got my flywheel wrench back here, so that's ready to come off too. I don't want to take that off because having the flywheel is kind of nice turning it over, and we'll check everything in there eventually. All right, so there again you can see how the muffler is unique, that it's those 3 bolts there. So you got to be careful with that. Don't want to mess that up. Your air intake is 4 bolts, 1, 2, 3, 4. And the upper water pipe, this is what you're afraid to find. It's a hole like this. It's kind of interesting. I'm not sure why they, well, now that I say that, I know why. They use thin stuff here because this isn't straight, it's bent. So it's kind of thin and corrodes. Versus, that pipe there is very solid. So we got the radiator off. Radiator, surprisingly, is just 2 bolts. I got them just sitting here so I don't lose them, but they come up from the bottom. And before I take the governor off here, I want to take this apart and see what in the world is under here. This, I think, is a pipe clamp. So I'm curious to see, and we'll get this apart. All right, so I have no idea about this. Gonna have to consult the knowledge base at B, which is not me. I got some penetrant on that one there. I need to put some on the other. And see, I find it interesting. This pulley is a half pulley. These bolts are holding it in half. I still don't really understand how this works, so find that out in next video. And we'll slip this governor off. Alright, and maybe moving on to the last thing for today. We're going to take the clutch fork assembly off. 4 bolts, 2 top and bottom. I've already got this pin here loose so it can come out. And we'll take everything out of the clutch. See if we can get that drive disc off. And I'd like to kind of take the pulley off if I can. Eventually this first reduction gear cover will come off, but probably not today. You can see I've had some oil coming out here, so I'd like to see what was causing that, solve it, and we'll replace this clutch pad here. May put a bushing in that, we'll see. And yeah, so the pulley, in order to get the pulley off, this has got to come out. So that's like the fork, it's helping hold it in there. Then all of your clutch plates and everything are in here. Alright, so we got this off. The 2 bolts here, all the bolts down there. And see if you can see in here well. She actually looks pretty good in here. The big thing to pay attention to is the gear teeth there from the fan shaft to the governor shaft. The fan shaft teeth, gear, they sometimes get pretty thin. Those actually look pretty good. They got some wear on them, but overall they're pretty good. If they're real sharp and thin, they should be replaced. They do make new old stock, or not new old stock. They make new ones today. Not cheap, but better than that exploding on you. Weights look good. Free, of course. Would be a problem if they weren't. And started yanking this off, and of course it's got the oil line like my G, so this sticks down here below. So when you take all of the bolts off, you got to pry it up, and the nut fell down in the engine. It's still on the line, but it's just slid on down the shaft. So yeah, what else here? See the camshaft there? Looks a little dirty, to be honest with you. So this here is how this was designed to work to get this drive disc off. Is a nut goes in here on the back side in these slots here, and it's supposed to be, I think you're supposed to have a square nut and it would fit nice and whatever. I don't really have that, but if somehow if you get these bolts even a little crooked or something, it grabs onto the nut and prevents it from turning, and then these bolts just push off on it. I'm curious to see, sometimes these come off real gently. Sometimes they come off pretty dangerously. Trying to keep my hands as clear as possible. I think that bolt just went really crooked. Let's try this again. Alright, so I actually got that screwdriver holding that nut. There we go. Just like that. Popped off. So you'll see I can take this out here. Take this one out and thread this a little bit. See if I can. There we go. And voila. And here's what I think every man fears. You go to take the pulley off and there's just not enough clearance to the tire. So tire or wheel has to be moved out. It's no fun. I really did not want to do that right now. Really didn't. So I'll table that and I don't know, see what we want to do next. Everything looks pretty good though. See if I can shine my light on this. So I wondered on that wartime A if I didn't have a broken spline after all. If that's meant to be, because I know that's meant to be like that. You saw a spot on the drive disc. I think to make sure that you put it on in the correct orientation. So yeah, one thing that's interesting is there's a friction disc in here, one in here, and that's it for this. There's no like double-sided disc plate or anything like that. So that's where I think I'm going to end it today. It's amazing how much you take off. Doesn't look like much is left. So we might get in here a little bit more at some point and see what we got going on. But I like to kind of start ordering parts, start working on the radiator and things like that. So subscribe, like, if you can. We'll continue on this and get this old girl back together. Have a good day.